And then tonight is going to be my last video about Unit 9, Part 1, which is transports in animals. Now, when we talk about transports, we need to first talk about the circulatory systems. Now, the circulatory system is the main transport system of blood, nutrients, and waste products around an organism's body. Now, the blood in the system comes in two types, which is oxygenated and deoxygenated. Now, oxygenated blood is blood which is rich in oxygen. So this is basically the hemoglobin in the red blood cells has been combined with oxygen and it is full of it. This blood comes in the arteries. Now, deoxygenated blood, which basically is the blood that contains a lot of waste products such as urea and little oxygen. Now, this is the blood that normally comes in veins. Now, there are two different types of systems of circulatory. Now, there's a double and a single circulatory system. Here, I got a picture of each. In a double circulatory system, the blood passes through the heart twice on a single loop. This also means that the heart, in this case, has 4 chambers, and the oxygenated blood and the deoxygenated blood are separated. In a single circulatory system, the blood only passes through the heart once on each circulation. This also leads to that the heart has only 2 sections. Now, these single circulatory systems are normally found in fish, and the double ones are normally found on land-dwelling organisms such as mammals, birds, and reptiles. Now, here's a number of advantages that double circulatory system has, because the double passing through the heart enables the blood to be at a higher pressure all the way along the cycle. This causes the blood to reach its target quicker, which means that the delivery of oxygen nutrients can be faster. And this means that the cardiovascular respiration and supply is much more effective in mammal than a fish. But both of them contains the basically like a similar functions and parts. For example, in the heart, they both contain the ventricle and the atrium. They both have arteries, veins, and capillaries. Except in one case, it's the lungs where it gets the oxygen from, and one case, which is the gills in the fish. Now, the heart is the energy and the engine behind the system, because it acts as a pump and pumps the blood all the way through the system. It is made up of special cardiac muscles that contracts and relaxes regularly throughout life. It is divided into 4 chambers: the right and left atrium and the right and left ventricle. Now, the blood enters in the atrium and out of the ventricle on the right-hand side of the heart, and vice versa on the other. Now, sometimes students get confused between sides of the heart. If you look at a picture of a heart on your exam paper, it is actually a mirror image of the heart. To be able to distinguish which side is which, you have to look the heart from the back side. So basically, if the side that you're looking to on the paper is the right-hand side of the heart, that means it is the left-hand side of the heart in your body, and the same on the other side as well. Here's a picture of a vertical section through a heart. You can see that it is divided into 4 chambers: the right and left atrium, the left and right ventricle, and it is separated by a septum. Now, you can also see that the left-hand side is much more thicker than the right-hand side. This is because that the left-hand side of the heart pumps blood to every single part of the body, whilst the right-hand side only needs to pump the blood to the lungs to get the blood oxygenated. And you can see that there are 4 different blood vessels that leads both in and out of the heart. On the right-hand side, you get 2 vena cavas. Well, the plural is actually vena cava with an E at the end, not S. Now, one of them is from the body, one of them is from the head. Now, leading out of the right hand side of the heart is the pulmonary artery. And this leads to the lungs, which the blood gets oxygenated. Now, sometimes it's very, very confusing because normally the blood in the arteries contains oxygenated and full of nutrients. But in this case, the blood in the pulmonary artery contains deoxygenated blood. This is because that if you take oxygenated blood to the lungs, it would be a waste of energy and time for the lungs to continue to oxygenate the already oxygenated blood. And then on the left hand side of the heart, you have the pulmonary vein, which leads back to the heart. Now this vein contains oxygenated blood, which is different from all other veins. And then leading out of the left hand side of the heart is the aorta, which pumps the blood and carries the blood to every single part of the body. Now, the muscles in the heart have to be constantly supplied with nutrients. Now, this is done by coronary arteries. Coronary means to do with the heart. These arteries, they support the heart with nutrients as the blood can't diffuse out of the thick walls of the heart. When these arteries are blocked, it is called coronary heart diseases. And when the heart stops because of it, it is called a cardiac arrest. Now, CHD, which is shorthand for coronary heart disease, is a very, very common cause of death, especially in developed countries. Now, there are several factors which causes this disease, and I'll be talking about them in the next slide. Here they are. Smoking, diet, obesity, stress, genes, age, and gender. Now, smoking can cause smokers are much more likely to die from a heart attack than non-smokers. Diet. If you eat a diet of saturated fats and high in salts, you risk of getting a buildup of cholesterol, which is a very, very fatty kind of fat that builds up around your blood vessels. Now, if they build up along your coronary blood vessels, they sometimes cause these blood vessels to be blocked because of the fat that is actually building up alongside of it. And this stops the blood from being carried to the heart and causes cardiac arrest, which is a heart attack. Obesity. Obesity is basically the same thing as a diet, because obesity, you have much more fat in your body and you'll increase the chance of the coronary artery getting blocked because you have a lot of fat. That's basically it. Now, stress. Well, there is not a very, very significant cause that stress leads to CHD, but however, there's always a link between with a person being burdened down with stress than a person with little stress. And the person who was very, very much in stress have a very, very high chance of developing CHD than a person with no stress. Now, genes. Sometimes this disease is not carried down through a family, but your genes sometimes may say that you are more vulnerable to this disease than others. Age. The risk of developing CHD increases if you get older. That's basically it, because we age and our body function slows down and that kind of things. Gender. Male are more likely to develop CHD than females. That's the reason. Now, here's a picture of how cholesterol builds up inside your in your blood vessels. Now I'm gonna exit full screen to just point you with my mouse about it. So basically, you can see that on the left hand side has a healthy coronary artery. Now, in the second picture of the artery, you can see that this yellow stuff building up here. This is cholesterol. Then you can see the effect it does. It's that it narrows the blood vessel, making the blood pressure higher, and it also makes the blood more difficult to pass through here. And the third picture, you can see the continuation of buildup of cholesterol. You can see that the blood vessel is very, very tight, and only a small amount of red blood cells can get passed through here now. And on the last picture here, you can see that the cholesterol has completely blocked the artery here, leading that no red blood cells can pass through here. This leads the blood to go backwards into here and then it causes no nutrients to be delivered to the heart from down here, and this basically in a very short time will cause cardiac arrest, and then if the person does not get supply back, he will die or become permanently damaged. Here's the prevention of CHD. So basically it's quite straightforward. You just have to improve your lifestyle through eating a balanced diet, not eating too many saturated fats and high salt, eating a balanced proportion of fats, salts, carbohydrates, proteins, and fibers. Exercise regularly and stop smoking. These are basically the three easiest things you can do, but some people can't do it. And also, doctors may prescribe patients with drugs called statin that reduces blood cholesterol levels, but this drug can have some very unpleasant side effects. So basically, these drugs are not prescribed by doctors to people who can easily improve their health by changing their lifestyle a little. For example, if you're eating too much McDonald's, then your doctor might just tell you that you just stop eating McDonald's and just eat something healthy rather than prescribing you with a statin. Now here's the treatment of CHD. So basically there are 5 different methods. You can either prescribe drugs or does a coronary bypass operation, or you can do an insertion of a mesh tube into the coronary artery, or you can do angioplasty, and the last option is a heart transplant. Now prescribing drugs is prescribing statin, which I've explained in the last slide. Coronary bypass operation is that when the original coronary artery has completely shut it down, which doesn't work anymore. So this works by cutting a section of an artery from another part of your body, usually in your calf, and then attach it to the aorta and to the blocked or damaged coronary artery. So the blood can be supplied through that new artery into the old one. And the next one is the insertion of a mesh tube into the coronary artery. This is when a little mesh tube called a stent is inserted inside of the blocked coronary artery to keep it open. Angioplasty is when a tiny balloon is inserted into the blocked artery, and that is filled, and then it is inflated using water. This water pushes the artery open, and then it is then removed. Now, in very severe cases, even all the first 4 options might not work, then the patient may require a complete heart transplant. Now, this is very easy to do in terms of operation because surgeons now can almost always do a perfect job of removing the heart and replacing it with a new one. The big problem comes afterwards. This is the same thing as a liver transplant. It is rejection, because the patient's immune system recognizes the heart as being foreign and attacks it. The patients are given immunosuppressant drugs, which they have to take for the rest of their lives, and have very serious side effects, including the weakening of your immune system. Here's a picture of coronary bypass operation. You can see, I'm going to execute full screen here. You can see that here, this dark red one is the original artery, and this light red one that extends all the way from the top of the picture to the bottom of the picture is the new artery cut from another section of your body, usually the calf. And you can see that it is attached to the aorta at one end, and it is also attached to the old artery where it is not blocked at the other end. So basically the blood can be supplied to the heart through here. Now a heartbeat. Now a heartbeat is basically the heart's function of pumping the blood. Now you always hear something like a lubbed up as you feel with your hand. Now basically the heart beats through 2 parts. Now I'm going to explain them in further later. Now the heart beats on an average of 60 to 75 times a minute. It is measured and recorded as an ECG graph in hospitals. Now ECG stands for electrocardiography. Now the heartbeat can be controlled by a patch of muscles in the right atrium called the pacemaker. Now the pacemaker works by signals sent from the brain. Now, for example, if the brain detects that there's an increase in the pH of the blood because of exercise. Now, this is because that during exercise, your body produces a lot of carbon dioxide. Now, this carbon dioxide dissolves in the blood, forming a very, very weak acid. Now, your brain detects that, and then it sends a message to the pacemaker telling it, oh, okay, oh, fine. In the blood now, there's a very, very lot of carbon dioxide. We need you to pump the heart faster to be able to get these waste gases out of the body. Now, this is how it works. And sometimes the pacemaker stops working. This is very dangerous because if your heartbeat goes on too fast, you will pass out, and then your heart will eventually stop because it's very, very exhausted. And also sometimes cause your heart to be beat so low, and then you also die from it. Now, if the original pacemaker stops working, then artificial one could be inserted into your heart. Now, these artificial ones can last up for 10 years before they have to be replaced. Now, here's a picture of electrocardiography graph, and on the right hand side, here's a picture of how does the artificial pacemaker works. Now you can see that it has this electrical metal wire inserted into your heart to help it beat, basically control the beating. Next is the valves. Now, the reason that we have valves in our heart is basically stop blood from mixing with each other. Because this is basically, if you have mixing blood of deoxygenated and oxygenated, they will cause your overall oxygen carrying ability to decrease. This is why. Now, so basically, before we talk about valves, we need to describe the two different positions of the heart. When the heart muscles contract, it is called systole. When the heart muscles relaxes, it is called diastole. There are two types of valves: atrioventricular valves and semilunar valves. Now, valves on the left-hand side of the heart are called bicuspid or mitral valves because it is made out of two parts. Bi means two. Valves on the right-hand side of the heart are made out of three parts and are called tricuspid valves. Now, here's how the heart pumps blood. Now, this is the image I've taken directly from my textbook because I can't find images on Google saying that in like stages of how does this heart pumps blood. Now, this includes the valves. So, firstly, the heart comes into diastole. This is where all muscles relaxes, and this is where the blood flows into the heart. And in this case, the atrioventricular valves on both sides are open. The semilunar valves on both sides are shut. The muscles of the atria relaxes, which is diastole, allowing the blood to flow into the heart from the veins from on each side. Now the next stage is atriosystole. The muscles of the atria contract. The muscles of the ventricles remain relaxed. Now this causes the blood to be forced from the atria into the ventricles. The semilunar valve remains shut. The valves in the veins are forced shut as well, either from the pulmonary vein or the vena cava, because to prevent the blood from flowing back into the veins. That's pretty straightforward. The muscles of the atria contract, squeezing the blood into the ventricles. Now the next stage, or the last stage, is the ventricular systole. This is where the muscles of the atria relaxes and the muscles of the ventricles contract. Blood is forced out of the ventricles into the arteries. This is either into the aorta and into the pulmonary artery. Now the semilunar valves are forced open by the pressure of the blood flowing out of the ventricles. The atrioventricular valves are forced shut by the pressure of the blood, because to prevent the blood from flowing back into the atria. The muscles of the ventricles then contract, obviously, to force the blood out. After this stage, it goes back into the diastole. Now, all these three stages happen very, very quickly. Now, it happens in each cycle of lub-dub. Each lub-dub is each of these 3 repeated. Now, the heart doesn't exactly move like this, but this is basically each stage within a split second of how the heart is positioned. Okay, I'm gonna end the video here for the part 1. Now, this part 1 is basically a video about the heart, the function of the heart, the structure of the heart, as well as related heart disease and how to treat it. Okay, I'm gonna do now the part 2 is gonna be about the blood vessels, as well as the lymph. Okay, it's really late here now. It's 11:09 p.m. here. I'm gonna try and finish the other PPT for the second video of this unit tomorrow in school, and then see you then.